Welcome to the Revenge Chronicles channel. Enjoy your viewing pleasure. Hey Reddit. I'm Max, a guy in my late 40s. I co-run a pharmaceutical company with my siblings, and honestly, things have been going great lately. I was on a business trip last week and we closed a deal so big it felt like hitting the jackpot. I couldn't wait to get home and share the good news with my wife, Camila. We've been married for over 20 years, and while marriage isn't always perfect, I thought we were in a good place. My flight got in earlier than expected, so I decided to surprise her. I pictured her face lighting up when I walked through the door, maybe even a hug that erased the exhaustion from my trip. Instead, I found something that changed everything. The first thing I noticed when I pulled into our driveway was an unfamiliar gold Mercedes parked there. My stomach sank immediately. We live in a quiet neighborhood and I know the cars around here. This one? Totally out of place. I told myself maybe it was a contractor or something, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I walked into the house as quietly as I could, a mix of nervous excitement and unease. The house was silent, except for the faint sound of music coming from upstairs. My heart started racing as I made my way to our bedroom. I don't know why I didn't just call out to her. It's like a part of me already knew something was wrong. When I pushed the door open, the sight in front of me knocked the wind out of my chest. Camila was lying in bed with another man. Naked. Her arm draped over him like they'd done this a million times before. My world froze. The life we built together, the memories, the trust, it all shattered in an instant. Even her snoring, a sound I'd once found oddly comforting, felt like a slap in the face. It was all so normal, so casual, like this was their routine. I didn't even know how long I stood there before they noticed me. Camila woke up first. She saw me and froze, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and guilt. The guy bolted upright, scrambling to cover himself. I didn't say a word. I just turned around, walked out, and sat in my car, trying to process what I'd just seen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. My life as I knew it was over. Sitting in my car, I felt like I was outside my own body. My mind was racing, but my hands? They were steady now. Too steady. I didn't go back inside right away. Instead, I just stared at that gold Mercedes, memorizing its plate number. Whoever this guy was, I was going to find out everything about him. After a few minutes, I finally mustered the nerve to go back in. The adrenaline that had kept me numb was fading, replaced by a slow-burning rage. When I walked into the house, they were downstairs now, both fully dressed. Camila looked like she'd been crying, but I couldn't care less. "Max," she started, her voice shaky, "I can explain." I held up my hand to stop her. "Don't. Just don't." The guy was standing awkwardly by the door, avoiding eye contact. He looked younger than me, mid-30s maybe, and had this stupid, smug look on his face, even though he was clearly terrified. "You," I said, pointing at him. "Get out." He didn't argue, just bolted past me like his life depended on it. The second the door slammed shut, I turned to Camila. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off again. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice low but firm. She hesitated, then stammered, He's no one. Just someone I met at work." "At work?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "So this is what you do while I'm out working to keep this family afloat? You bring your work into my bed?" "Max, it's not like that," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It's not serious. It just happened and—" "Stop," I interrupted. "I don't want to hear excuses. I want the truth." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I stood there, staring at the woman I'd shared my life with, wondering how we'd gotten here. How had I been so blind? When she finally pulled herself together, she said, "It didn't mean anything. I swear. It's been a tough year for me. You're always so busy and I just felt so alone." "Alone?" I repeated, my voice rising. "I've been busting my ass to give you everything you could ever want, and you feel alone? It's not your fault," she whispered, but I wasn't buying it. Her words felt hollow, rehearsed. Like she'd been preparing this speech for weeks, maybe months. I didn't say anything else. I grabbed my suitcase from the hallway and started walking toward the door. She followed me, begging me to stay, to talk, to listen, but I couldn't. Not right now. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. "We're going to talk about this," I said, my voice cold. "But not today. I can't even look at you right now." I drove to my brother's house that night. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. Too focused on figuring out what to do next. When I got to my brother's place, he opened the door, immediately noticing the look on my face. "What's wrong, Max?" he asked. I hesitated, unsure of how much to tell him. Finally, I just said, "Camila's been cheating on me." His expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "Are you serious?" I nodded, and for the first time that night, I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Yeah. I caught her with some guy in our bed." My brother didn't say anything right away. He just hugged me, a rare moment of support that I desperately needed. "Stay as long as you need," he said. That night, as I lay on his couch staring at the ceiling, the reality of what had happened finally hit me. The woman I'd loved, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And I had no idea what to do next. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, the kind that comes from a night of restless thoughts and no sleep. My brother, Ethan, handed me a cup of coffee and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "You okay?" he asked. "Not even close," I muttered, staring into my cup. "I can't believe this is my life right now." He didn't press me for details, which I appreciated. Instead, he gave me space to talk at my own pace. "I'm going back to the house," I said eventually. Ethan frowned. "You sure that's a good idea?" I nodded. "I need answers. And I need to grab some of my stuff." When I got to the house, Camila was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. She looked like she hadn't slept either, her eyes puffy and red. She started to say something as I walked in, but I held up my phone. "I'm not here to talk," I said. "I'm here to gather proof." She looked confused for a second, then her face fell as she realized what I meant. "Max, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," I cut her off. I went straight to our bedroom and started taking pictures. The unmade bed, the pillows she hadn't bothered to fix, even the faint imprint of where the guy's head had been on my pillow, it all felt like a slap in the face. I didn't stop there. I went through the trash, finding a crumpled-up receipt from a hotel with yesterday's date on it. When I found her phone charging on the nightstand, I picked it up and unlocked it. She didn't even try to stop me. Her messages confirmed what I already knew. There were texts from a guy named Jeff, probably the owner of the gold Mercedes. They weren't even subtle. Flirty emojis, plans to meet up, and one message that made my stomach churn. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." I felt my blood boil as I scrolled further. Their conversations went back months. I walked back into the living room holding her phone. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Camila stared at her hands, avoiding my eyes. "A few months," she said quietly. "A few months?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How many times?" "I don't know," she admitted, tears streaming down her face again. "It wasn't like that." "Don't you dare tell me it wasn't like that," I snapped, cutting her off. "You planned this. You lied to me every single day. You let me come home, kiss you, sit at the same table, sleep in the same bed, while you were sneaking around with him." She sobbed harder, but I couldn't bring myself to care. "I'm not just mad about what you did," I said. "I'm mad that you didn't even have the decency to end it. You waited until I caught you. Did you think I was stupid? That I wouldn't find out?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she cried. I laughed bitterly. Too late for that. After grabbing a suitcase and a few essentials, I walked toward the door. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. "I'm filing for divorce," I said coldly. "And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to make this easy for you, you're dead wrong." Her sobs followed me out the door, but I didn't look back at Ethan's house. I sat on the couch, scrolling through the pictures and texts I'd taken from Camila's phone. Every new piece of evidence felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was how easily she had lied day after day, pretending everything was fine while sneaking off to be with Jeff. Ethan came in, setting a beer on the table in front of me. "How'd it go?" I shook my head. "Worse than I thought. It wasn't a one-time thing. This has been going on for months." Ethan clenched his jaw but stayed quiet. I think he knew that no words could make this easier. After a moment, I said, "You know what's crazy?" She didn't even try to deny it. She just sat there crying like that's supposed to make me feel better. Ethan sighed. "People like her don't think they'll get caught. They think they're smarter than everyone else. But when the truth comes out, they crumble." I nodded, taking a sip of the beer. She said she felt alone. That's her excuse. Alone, while I was working my ass off to provide for her. "You think it's over with this guy?" Ethan asked cautiously. I shrugged. "Does it even matter? If it's not him, it'll be someone else. She's shown who she really is." That night, I started making calls. First, I contacted a divorce attorney. I wanted to know my rights, how to protect myself, and what steps to take next. The lawyer was blunt, which I appreciated. "If you've got proof of the affair, that's a big advantage," she said. "But be careful. Things can get messy, especially if your assets are tied up with hers. Do you think she'll fight you on this? I thought about it. Camila wasn't exactly the type to admit her mistakes and move on. Yeah, I said. She'll fight. Then you need to be ready, the lawyer replied. After hanging up, I started digging deeper into Camila's life. I went through credit card statements, emails, and anything else I could access. What I found made my blood run cold. There were charges for hotel rooms, dinners at fancy restaurants, and even gifts, none of which I'd ever seen. She'd been living a whole other life, using our money to fund her affair. I felt a mix of rage and humiliation. This wasn't just about love or lust. This was about betrayal on every level. She didn't just cheat on me, she robbed me, lied to me, and treated me like a fool. Ethan found me still hunched over my laptop around midnight. You should get some sleep, man, he said. I can't, I muttered. Not until I've got everything. He sat down next to me, glancing at the screen. You're going all out, huh? Damn right I am, I said. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. I won't let her screw me over again. Ethan nodded, then said something that stopped me in my tracks. Max, are you sure this is just about her? Or is this about you needing to feel like you're still in control? I stared at him, the question hanging heavy in the air. He wasn't wrong. Part of me was consumed by the need to regain control, to undo the damage she'd done. But could I? The next morning I got a call from Camila. I let it ring twice before answering, my tone as cold as the ice in my chest. What do you want? I need to talk to you, she said, her voice shaky. Please, Max. Just hear me out. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to block her number and never hear her voice again. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me agree. Fine. I'll come by in an hour. When I got to the house, she was sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her together. She looked small, fragile. But I wasn't there to feel sorry for her. Say what you need to say, I said, crossing my arms. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you in a way that's unforgivable. But I need you to understand, it wasn't about you. It was about me. I laughed bitterly. Is that supposed to make me feel better? That you destroyed our marriage because of your issues? I wasn't happy, she said, her voice breaking. And I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to ask for help. So instead of talking to me, you found someone else? I shot back. That's your solution? I made a mistake, she said, her hands trembling. A terrible mistake. But I love you, Max. I still love you. I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. Well, did she even understand what that word meant? Love? I repeated, shaking my head. You don't do this to someone you love, Camila. You don't lie to them, betray them, and humiliate them. I was scared, she said, her tears falling freely now. Scared that you didn't love me anymore. That you only cared about work, about the company. You think I was working for me? I interrupted. I was working for us. For you, for our future. But I guess that wasn't enough, was it? She didn't answer, and the silence was deafening. Finally I said, this marriage is over. I've already contacted a lawyer. You're going to get served, and I'm going to make sure you don't walk away with more than you deserve. Her eyes widened in shock. Max, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. No, I said firmly. There's no fixing this. You made your choice. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Please, Max, don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. I pulled my arm free and looked her in the eye. You threw it away the moment you let him into our bed. With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I got into my car, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of something new. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Back at Ethan's, I sat in silence, replaying the conversation with Camila in my head. Her tears, her excuses, they didn't move me. If anything, they only strengthened my resolve. I called my lawyer to move things along. Serve the papers, I said. After hanging up, I felt a small sense of relief. The ball was rolling now. Ethan noticed the change in my demeanor. What's next? He asked. I took a deep breath. I focus on me. On moving forward. That night, I packed up more of my things from the house, avoiding Camila completely. This time, there were no tears, no arguments. Just quiet. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. A week passed and things were quiet. Too quiet. I stayed with Ethan, threw myself into work, and kept my mind busy. But every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself, expecting chaos. Camila had called a few times, but I ignored her. My lawyer assured me the divorce papers had been served. She'll probably try to negotiate, he said. Stay firm. One evening I was having dinner with Ethan when my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Camila, it was one of her friends, Sophia. "Max, we need to talk," she said urgently. "About what?" "It's about Camila," she said, hesitating. "She's not handling this well." I wanted to laugh. "Not handling it well? She's the one who cheated." "I know," Sophia said quickly. "But she's falling apart. She's saying things like she'll do something drastic." I sighed, torn between anger and concern. "Tell her to get help. I can't fix this for her." Sophia paused, then said, "Just thought you should know. Take care, Max." After the call, I sat back, unsure of how to feel. Was it guilt creeping in or just exhaustion from the whole ordeal? Ethan broke the silence. "She's playing the victim. Don't let her pull you back in." He was right. I couldn't let Camila's mess drag me down any further. 2 days later, Camila showed up unannounced at Ethan's house. I heard the knock, and when I opened the door, there she was, her face pale, her eyes puffy like she hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated but stepped aside, letting her in. Ethan gave me a look from the kitchen, clearly ready to intervene if things went south. "What do you want, Camila?" I asked, crossing my arms. She sat down on the couch, her hands trembling. "I can't believe this is how it ends, Max. I know I messed up, but we've been together for so long. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It did," I said firmly. "Until you threw it away." "I was lonely," she said, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake. But I love you. I want to fix this." I shook my head. "You want to fix it now because you got caught. If I hadn't walked in that day, how long would it have gone on?" She looked down, silent. That was all the answer I needed. "I'm moving forward, Camila." "You should too," I said, walking toward the door. She stood, tears streaming down her face. "Max, please don't hate me." I didn't respond. I opened the door and waited for her to leave. She hesitated, then walked out, her shoulders slumped. When the door clicked shut, Ethan walked in. "You okay?" "I will be," I said, more to myself than to him. After Camila left, I sat on the couch, staring at the door she'd just walked through. The silence in the house felt heavy, but my mind wasn't quiet. Her words kept echoing. "Doesn't that mean anything?" It did mean something. 20 years of marriage, countless memories, and the life we built together, they weren't meaningless. But they weren't enough to justify what she'd done either. I thought about how blind I'd been, how I'd missed the signs. Ethan sat down across from me, breaking the silence. "You look like you're trying to solve a puzzle you don't have all the pieces for." "Because that's what it feels like," I admitted. "I can't stop wondering when this started. What did I miss? Was I that oblivious?" Ethan shook his head. "Don't do that to yourself, Max. This isn't on you." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "It's hard not to." She said she was lonely. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention, or maybe I worked too much. "You worked to give her a good life," Ethan said firmly. "That's not a crime. And loneliness doesn't justify betrayal." I nodded, but the question still nagged at me. After Ethan went to bed, I pulled out my laptop and started going through old pictures and messages, trying to piece together the timeline. Camila and I used to text constantly. Silly updates, inside jokes, plans for dinner. But somewhere along the way, the messages became shorter, more practical. I found a gap in our messages about 6 months ago, right around the time her affair must have started. My heart sank as I realized how often I'd chalked her distance up to stress or mood swings. I'd never thought to question it, never imagined there might be someone else. Then I stumbled across a message from her friend Sophia, sent months ago. "You've got to tell him. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. Sophia knew. Without thinking, I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered after a few rings, her voice cautious. "Max?" "Sophia," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." She hesitated. "Okay. How long have you known about Camila's affair?" There was a long pause. "Max, I didn't want to get involved." "That's not what I asked," I said sharply. "How long?" "Since it started," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" "I tried to convince her to tell you," Sophia said quickly. "I told her she was making a mistake, that she needed to come clean. But she begged me not to say anything. She said she'd handle it." "Handle it?" I repeated bitterly. "She didn't handle anything. She let it spiral until I caught her red-handed." "I'm sorry, Max," Sophia said. "I should have done more. I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" I said, my voice rising. "You let me live in a lie for months. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" She didn't answer, and I realized there was no point in continuing the conversation. "Don't call me again," I said before hanging up. I sat there for a long time trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. It wasn't just Camila who had betrayed me, it was everyone who'd known and said nothing. By the time I went to bed, one thing was clear. I couldn't trust anyone from the life I'd shared with Camila. I needed a clean break, a fresh start. The following morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The anger from my conversation with Sophia hadn't disappeared, but it had morphed into something else, a determination to take control of my life again. I was done letting Camila's betrayal define me. The first step was practical: my finances. I spent the morning on the phone with my lawyer, ensuring that my assets were protected. Camila and I had joint accounts, but I moved quickly to open a separate one and transfer my salary into it. "This is about setting boundaries," my lawyer said. "You're making it clear that she can't use your money to clean up her mess." I spent the rest of the day tying up loose ends. Canceling the gym membership we'd signed up for together, removing her as a contact on my work benefits, and even changing my emergency contact to Ethan. It felt petty at times but also necessary. By late afternoon I was feeling more in control than I had in weeks. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Camila. "We need to talk. Please." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "I've said everything I needed to say." Almost immediately she replied, "You don't understand. It's important." I debated ignoring her but decided against it. If she had something important to say, I wanted to hear it, if only to close this chapter for good. "Meet me at the coffee shop by the park in an hour," I texted. When I arrived, Camila was already sitting at a corner table, looking as though she hadn't eaten or slept in days. For a brief moment I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered why we were here. "What is it?" I asked, sitting down across from her. She fidgeted with her hands, her eyes darting around the room like she couldn't meet my gaze. "Max, there's something I didn't tell you." My stomach tightened. "Go on." She hesitated, then said, "It wasn't just there were others." The words hit me like a freight train. For a moment I couldn't breathe. "Others?" I said, my voice dangerously low. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't about you. I was trying to fill something. I don't even know what. I was lost." Lost. That was her excuse? I felt my hands clenching into fists under the table, my whole body trembling with barely contained rage. "How many?" I demanded. "Max, please don't do this," she whispered. "How many?" I repeated. She didn't answer, but the look on her face said it all. "More than one. More than I could stomach." I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You've said enough," I said coldly. "Don't contact me again unless it's through my lawyer." "Max, wait." But I was already walking out the door. Back at Ethan's, I told him everything. He didn't try to offer advice or platitudes. He just listened, which was exactly what I needed. "I don't even know who she is anymore," I said finally. "You don't need to," Ethan replied. "What matters now is who you are without her." His words stuck with me. Camila's confession had shattered any lingering hope of reconciliation, but it also gave me a sense of finality. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just Max, starting over, one piece at a time. The days following Camila's confession were a blur of raw emotions. Anger, sadness, and disbelief hit me in waves, each one leaving me more drained than the last. I kept busy, focusing on work and trying to find some semblance of normalcy. Ethan, ever the steady presence, kept me grounded. "You've got to let this out," he said one evening as we sat on his porch. "Bottling it up isn't going to help." I nodded but didn't respond. I wasn't sure I was ready to confront the depths of what I was feeling. That weekend, I decided to go back to the house to pack up more of my belongings. Ethan offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to do it alone. When I arrived, the house felt foreign, almost like it wasn't mine anymore. The air was heavy with memories, and every corner seemed to echo with the life we'd once shared. Camila wasn't there, which was a relief. I moved quickly, grabbing clothes, books, and anything else I could carry. But as I reached the bedroom, I stopped. The bed. The same one where I'd found her with Jeff. Just looking at it made my stomach churn. I stood there for a moment, torn between rage and sorrow, before ripping the sheets off and throwing them into a garbage bag. Then I spotted the picture on the nightstand, a photo of us from our anniversary trip to Italy. We looked so happy, so oblivious. I picked it up, staring at it for a long moment before smashing it against the wall. The sound was deafening, and the sight of the shattered glass felt oddly cathartic. As I continued packing, I found more remnants of our life together. Love notes, anniversary cards, the sweater she'd given me for my birthday last year. I shoved everything into a box, unsure if I wanted to keep them or burn them. By the time I finished, the sun was setting. I stood in the living room taking one last look around. This was the house where I'd imagined growing old, where I'd envisioned a future filled with laughter and love. Now it was just a shell, a reminder of what I'd lost. I left without looking back. Later that night, Ethan and I sat in the living room watching an old movie. I told him about the picture frame, expecting him to laugh or shake his head. Instead, he just said, "Good. Sometimes you need to break things to move on." He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work at the pharmaceutical company, finding comfort in the routine. My siblings noticed I was quieter than usual but didn't press me. It was easier that way. Ethan suggested I start seeing a therapist. At first, I brushed off the idea. Talking to a stranger about my problems didn't seem like my style. But after another sleepless night replaying the betrayal in my head, I made an appointment. The first session was awkward. The therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Reeves, asked me to talk about what had happened. I found myself hesitating, unsure where to begin. "I caught my wife cheating," I said finally. "With a guy I didn't know, and later I found out there were others." Dr. Reeves nodded, her expression neutral. "How did that make you feel?" I almost laughed. "How do you think it made me feel? Like my whole life was a joke. Like the person I trusted most was a stranger." She let me vent, and by the end of the session I felt lighter. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all. A few days later, Camila called again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. I need to apologize," she said. "For everything. For lying, for hurting you, for ruining our marriage." I didn't say anything, letting the silence stretch until she continued. "I know it's too late to fix things, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you, Max. I was just broken." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Camila, love doesn't excuse what you did. If you were broken, you should have come to me. Instead, you chose to destroy everything we built." She started to cry, but I didn't feel the same pang of guilt I used to. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for," I said before hanging up. That was the last time we spoke directly. Later that week, I met with my lawyer again to finalize the divorce proceedings. We agreed to sell the house, split the proceeds, and divide the rest of our assets. I didn't want to fight for more than I was owed. I just wanted out. As I signed the papers, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. This was the end of an era, but also the beginning of something new. Ethan took me out for drinks that night to celebrate, or commiserate depending on how you looked at it. "Here's to starting fresh," he said, raising his glass. "To starting fresh," I echoed, clinking mine against his. The day the divorce was finalized, I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Sadness? Both seemed to swirl around me as I left the courthouse. My lawyer patted me on the shoulder. "It's a clean break, Max. You did the right thing." I nodded, but the words felt hollow. A clean break wasn't the same as closure. Ethan picked me up afterward, and we drove to a nearby diner for lunch. "How does it feel?" he asked once we'd settled into the booth. "Strange," I admitted. "Like I'm free, but I don't know what to do with it." He smirked. "That's the beauty of it, man. You get to figure it out." That weekend, I went back to the house one last time. The real estate agent had staged it for potential buyers, and it looked oddly unfamiliar. All the personal touches, our photos, the furniture we'd picked out together, were gone. I walked through each room, letting the memories surface. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet evenings we'd spent watching TV. It all felt like a lifetime ago. In the garage, I found an old box labeled Max's stuff. Inside were a few things I hadn't seen in years. An old baseball glove, some journals from college, and a stack of photos from before Camila and I were married. One picture caught my eye. It was from a camping trip Ethan and I had taken years ago. We looked so young, so carefree. For the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine smile tug at my lips. I packed up the box and left without looking back. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my routines. Therapy became a regular part of my schedule, and Dr. Reeves pushed me to confront the pain I'd been avoiding. "She didn't just betray you," Dr. Reeves said during one session. "She betrayed the version of yourself you were in that marriage. That's why it feels so personal. It's not just about losing her. It's about losing the identity you built around her." I sat with that for a moment, letting her words sink in. She was right. My whole life had been wrapped around the idea of us. Without Camila, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be. But little by little, I started figuring it out. Ethan and I began going to the gym together, something we hadn't done in years. At first it was just to blow off steam, but it quickly became something I looked forward to. There was something therapeutic about the rhythm of lifting weights, the burn in my muscles reminding me I was alive. One evening as we were leaving the gym, Ethan nudged me. "You know what you need? A night out. Something fun." I raised an eyebrow. "Fun? Like what?" "A bar, live music, a few drinks. Nothing crazy. Just to remind yourself there's life outside of work in this mess." I hesitated but eventually agreed. That Friday we went to a local bar that had live music. It was crowded but lively, the kind of place where you couldn't help but feel the energy. Ethan ordered a round of drinks and we found a spot near the stage. At first I felt out of place like a fish out of water. But as the band started playing, I began to relax. Ethan chatted with a couple of people, but I mostly kept to myself, sipping my drink and taking in the atmosphere. Then during a break between songs, a woman approached me. She had a warm smile and an easy confidence about her. "Hey," she said, holding out her hand. "I'm Rachel." "Max," I replied, shaking her hand. We started talking, and to my surprise the conversation flowed easily. She wasn't pushy or overly flirtatious, just genuine and curious. "You don't seem like the bar type," she said with a grin. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, laughing. "A little," she admitted. "But it's refreshing. Most guys here are, well, let's just say not as grounded." We talked for a while longer, and before she left, she handed me her number. "In case you ever feel like grabbing coffee," she said. As I watched her walk away, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. When I got back to Ethan's that night, he raised an eyebrow. "You've got a look," he said. "What look?" "The look of a man who just met someone interesting," he said with a smirk. I shook my head, laughing. "It's not like that. She just gave me her number." "Exactly," Ethan said, clapping me on the shoulder. "It's a start." For the first time in weeks I slept soundly. It wasn't because I was moving on or because the pain had vanished. But for the first time the future didn't seem so bleak. It was a small step, but it was mine. The days after meeting Rachel felt different, lighter somehow. I didn't rush to call her, but just knowing there were people out there who saw me as more than the guy whose wife cheated was a small relief. For weeks I'd been drowning in the identity of a betrayed husband. Now I started feeling like just Max again. Ethan noticed the change. One morning over coffee he gave me a knowing look. "So, are you gonna call her or what?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "It's not that I don't want to. I'm just not sure I'm ready for all that." "You don't have to be ready for a relationship," he said. "But maybe you're ready for a conversation. Coffee's harmless." He had a point. That afternoon, after much internal debate, I sent Rachel a text. "Hi Rachel. It's Max from the bar the other night. Hope you're doing well. Want to grab that coffee sometime?" Her reply came faster than I expected. "Hey Max. I was wondering if you'd text." "I'd love to. How about Saturday afternoon?" When Saturday came, I found myself nervously straightening my shirt in the mirror. It wasn't a date, I reminded myself. Just coffee. Still, I wanted to make a good impression, something I hadn't worried about in years. We met at a small cafe downtown. Rachel was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a book in her hand. When she saw me, she smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel out of place. "Hey," she said, standing to greet me. "Hey," I replied, settling into the chair across from her. The conversation came easily, just like it had at the bar. She told me about her work as a graphic designer, her love of hiking, and how she'd ended up moving to the city a few years ago. I shared bits and pieces of my own story, not everything but enough to feel honest. At one point she looked at me thoughtfully. "You seem like someone who's been through a lot recently," she said. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, you could say that." She didn't press for details, which I appreciated. Instead she said, "Well, for what it's worth, you seem like you're handling it with a lot of grace." That stuck with me. Grace. It wasn't how I'd felt these past few months, but maybe it was something to aspire to. After coffee, Rachel and I walked around the park, talking about everything from our favorite movies to the best places to eat in town. It felt easy, natural, like I wasn't carrying the weight of the past for once. When we said goodbye, she didn't push for another meeting or make any grand gestures. She simply said, "It was really nice spending time with you, Max. I hope we can do it again sometime." As I walked back to my car, I realized I wanted that too. The next week I found myself making small changes. I started cooking more, something I hadn't done in years. I reorganized Ethan's garage, partly to be helpful but mostly because it felt good to create order out of chaos. One evening, while flipping through an old photo album, I came across a picture of Camila and me from our honeymoon. We looked so young, so full of hope. For a moment, A pang of sadness hit me, but it wasn't as sharp as before. I closed the album and put it back on the shelf. It was part of my life, but it didn't define it. Rachel and I met up again a couple of weeks later, this time for lunch. She asked about my work, and for the first time in ages I found myself excited to talk about it. I told her about the recent deal my siblings and I had closed, and how we were planning to expand the business. "You seem really passionate about what you do," she said, smiling. "I guess I am," I said, surprised by my own realization. For so long, work had felt like an obligation, a means to an end. But talking about it with Rachel reminded me why I'd started in the first place. By the time I got home that evening, Ethan was already on the couch, flipping through channels. "How was it?" he asked, not looking away from the TV. "Good," I said, sitting down beside him. "Really good?" He glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. "You're smiling. That's new." I laughed, realizing he was right. In therapy, Dr. Reeves noticed the change too. "You seem lighter," she said during one session. "What's different?" I thought about it for a moment before replying. "I think I'm starting to see a future again. It's not clear and it's definitely not perfect, but it's there." She nodded. "That's a big step, Max. It sounds like you're starting to reclaim your life, not the one you had, but the one you want." I left her office that day feeling something I hadn't felt in months: optimism. The divorce had been a devastating blow, and the betrayal still stung when I let myself dwell on it. But for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. One small step at a time, I was finding my way back to myself. And for now, that was enough. As the months passed, the sharp edges of my pain began to dull. Life didn't magically become easy. There were still nights when memories of my old life crept in, and moments when I felt the familiar pang of what could have been. But slowly I found myself looking ahead instead of back. The house sold faster than I expected. When the final papers came through, I felt a bittersweet relief. That house had been a symbol of so many dreams, but it was also a place tied to betrayal. Letting it go felt like cutting the last tether to a past I didn't want to carry anymore. My new apartment wasn't grand, but it was cozy. I picked out furniture that felt like me, not the us that Camila and I used to be. I hung up pictures from my travels, found a bookshelf to display my favorite reads, and even bought a small plant, though Ethan joked I'd probably kill it in a week. "You're officially an adult," he teased as he handed me a watering can during one of his visits. "Next step, a pet?" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," I laughed. Rachel and I continued to grow closer, though at a pace that felt right for both of us. We kept things simple: coffee dates, hikes, the occasional dinner. She didn't pry into my past, but she didn't shy away from it either. One evening, we were walking through the park after grabbing burgers from a food truck. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching under our feet. "Can I ask you something?" she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Of course." She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Do you think you'll ever fully move on from everything?" It was a question I'd asked myself countless times. "I don't know if you ever fully move on," I admitted. "But I think you learn to carry it differently. It's like a scar. It doesn't hurt the same way it did when it was fresh, but it's still there, a part of you." She nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. For what it's worth, I think you're doing better than most people would." I smiled, touched by her sincerity. "Thanks, Rachel. That means a lot." Camila reached out one last time in the form of a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, her handwriting immediately recognizable. For a moment, I debated not opening it. What could she possibly say that would make a difference now? But curiosity won out. "Max, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to say this. I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for how I handled everything. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know how much I regret the pain I caused. You deserve better than what I gave you." She didn't ask for anything, didn't try to explain or justify. She simply ended with her name, signed plainly at the bottom. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, unsure if I'd ever look at it again. It didn't change anything, but in some small way it felt like a piece of closure. The holidays rolled around faster than I expected, and Ethan convinced me to host a small gathering at my apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a few friends, some snacks, and plenty of laughter. Rachel came too. She brought a homemade apple pie that put everyone else's store-bought contributions to shame. Ethan, of course, took full credit for introducing us. "Matchmaker of the year," he joked, raising a glass. At one point during the night, as everyone laughed at one of Ethan's ridiculous stories, I found myself looking around the room. This wasn't the life I had imagined a year ago, but it was good. Real. When Ethan raised a glass for a toast, his words caught me off guard. "To Max," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. For proving that even when life knocks you down, you can still get back up. And to new beginnings? Everyone raised their glasses and I felt a lump in my throat. Thanks, Ethan, I said quietly, clinking my glass against his. Later that night, after everyone had left, Rachel stayed to help clean up. We washed dishes side by side, the silence between us warm and comfortable. You've come a long way, you know, she said, handing me a plate to dry. Have I? I asked, glancing at her. She nodded. You seem lighter. Happier. I thought about that for a moment. I think I am, I admitted. As we finished tidying up, she leaned against the counter and smiled. So, what's next for Max? I laughed. What's next? She nodded. I shrugged, smiling back at her. Whatever I want it to be. She reached for my hand, her touch gentle but steady. I think you're going to be just fine. That night, after she left, I sat on my couch, looking around the apartment. It wasn't perfect and I still had a lot of healing to do. But for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The life I'd imagined with Camila was gone, but I wasn't. And as long as I was here, there was still so much ahead of me, new opportunities, new memories, new chances to grow. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And this time I was ready to write it on my own terms.